I've carried this crushing shame for what feels like a lifetime. It's not even mine, but it's wrapped around me so tightly that I can hardly breathe. I've written endlessly about it, pouring my heart out onto pages, hoping to shed this relentless weight that's constantly whispering, "You're not good enough. Who do you think you are?" I've worked I'm sorry, Tammy, I'm trying. I've worked tirelessly to shake it off, but it clings to me like an unbreakable chain, keeping me tethered to the past I ache to leave behind. I long to release it, to connect with my body, not just in my thoughts, but the chasm between the two feels insurmountable. I figured it out on paper, but how do I bridge that gap and truly begin to heal and transform my life?
Wow. So shame, right? How do you let go of the shame?
Carried this crushing shame for what feels like a lifetime. She knows it's not even mine.
I've thought about this recently when it comes to shame, and I think
Okay.
it applies. Shame to me is like that game when we were growing up, Hot Potato. Like it's
Okay.
this,
Oh.
shame is this thing that when it gets thrown at you, you catch it, and then it's like, oh my God, what do I do with this thing?
Right.
And it's like hot potato. I have to get rid of it. I have to get rid of it. I have to get rid of this
Toss
shame.
it to somebody else.
Right. And we toss it off to somebody else, and then it becomes their shame to carry. And you might carry your shame for a year, or you might carry your shame for a lifetime until you either let it go. Like if you think about it from that metaphor or whatever it's called. Why can't I talk?
I don't know.
I'm dying.
It's okay. That's a really good analogy. I haven't seen it that way.
Because we will pass shame down from one generation to the next through actions and through, experiences and through traumas, and even just from like,
whether we're projecting or teaching them what to be shameful of.
Right.
Like
And
this is shameful.
Also just like, a culture or a family unit, like if we don't need to go off on it. It makes sense. And so I was thinking that it's like we carry it until we toss it on to somebody else. And then we're like, whew, I don't have to carry that shame anymore. But obviously that doesn't work, right? Obviously it's still there. Obviously we're still carrying it because
you're feeling the heat on your hands from that hot potato.
And then you've got the guilt because you hurt somebody else and handed it down to them. And then you've got more shame. So you have to eventually forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And again, you have to eventually recognize that your shame, or what you're feeling shame over, all of these choices, actions, behaviors, and everything like that, was shame that was handed off onto you. So it's like you said, it's not even yours. Like in her message, it was like she recognizes that it's not even hers. How do I get rid of it? How do I get rid of this feeling? How do I finally set it down? You have to take steps and work towards that space of recognizing that, okay, this wasn't mine. I wasn't responsible for what happened to me that then created all of these actions and decisions and choices that the shame, is correlated and connected to. Therefore, I can forgive myself for my choices and actions after the fact, and I'm still worthy of love today. And then I can just set it down. I can literally just set that shame down and be like, I don't have to carry that anymore. Now, metaphorically, that's beautiful, right? This is like, oh, that's so cool. That would be awesome. That sounds like really, really nice. And then I set it down and I'll pick it up in the next breath. Or I'll set it down in such a way that I feel like wasn't the right way, or I skipped a step, or I'm just pretending and I'm going to fail again. And then I'll pick my shame right back up and I'll continue to carry it. And so truthfully, working towards the point of recognizing that you're still worthy of love and that you can forgive yourself for those experiences in the past is how eventually shame disappears. And it kind of like the game of hot potato can stop, where you're no longer hurting other people. And so that key right there of being able to forgive yourself, boy, like for me, what has helped me in the practice of being able to forgive myself is being able to draw from something greater than myself, having a belief and a faith in something higher than me, something fuller than me, something more loving, more kind, more understanding than me, something that in fact loves me unconditionally.
Right.
And if that thing that loves me unconditionally and can see me as the beautiful totality of who I am, then in some way I can like mirror that, and I can practice that, and I can remind myself of that, and I can slowly over time create this belief inside of myself that I am in fact worthy of that unconditional love, and I can forgive myself for the past.
Yeah.
So that might be the key for you, right? Getting some sort of connection to a higher power over time that will help you cultivate that belief in yourself that you're worthy of the forgiveness and of the love. But I would definitely say that if you make that the focal point rather than how do I get rid of this shame, the key to getting rid of shame is being able to forgive yourself. So now I can focus on how do I learn how to forgive myself.
Yeah.
So now I'm not hyper focused on the shame. I'm focused on how do I learn how to forgive myself? What does that process look like?
There you go.
Now I can get super curious about what it means to forgive myself and what would it feel like to forgive myself.
Yes.
So shifting the focus away from...
Does it make you a little uncomfortable? That's okay. That's where growth happens.
Right.
You're
Away
like,
from the
"Ooh,
shame.
I'm supposed to forgive myself? Hold up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge.
That's huge. That's like, I don't think that's so funny. Just like the way you're describing that is so profound. Like we focus on not being shameful, like getting out of the shame, not having shame, like stop feeling shame. But in order to do that is like, oh,
Gotta forgive
I have
yourself.
to get curious about actually forgiving myself.
Mm-hmm. Even because getting to the point in the process of healing shame and recognizing that it wasn't yours, like recognizing that this was like thrown on to me, this was given to me in such a way, and recognizing that it's not even my shame anymore at this point. I'm carrying the shame for something else or for someone else. That's a huge step in the healing process as well. And you have to get to that spot before you can say, oh, wait a minute, I can forgive myself.
Mm.
And it's like we were talking about earlier, was oftentimes it comes from the outside in. So you'll get to the point where you can forgive others probably before you get to the point where you can forgive yourself. And that's okay. Like if that's your journey with it, that's okay. And if you're going in the opposite direction where you're learning how to forgive yourself first and then being able to go out and forgive others, or maybe you're doing all of it simultaneously. That's probably the reality. But I think that's the key to shame, is getting to that spot of being able to just forgive yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love
Practice is our biggest, like whenever I feel like somehow out of the ether of space and time, I was implanted with this idea that like, it's not failing. You're not failing at life. You're not doing anything wrong. It's not a matter of failure. It's a matter of practice. You're just practicing all of these different things, practicing riding a bike, practicing tying your shoes, practicing walking. And when
practicing taking a drink of water without choking on it. Like some of us are really bad at that.
It takes a lot of practice, but our brain is programmed. It has like a clear definition of what failure is and what failure feels like and how to like judge and criticize and avoid failure. And then practice. Oh, yeah, everybody's got to practice things. Like we don't expect anybody to be able to do anything right the very first time. We fully account for the fact that practice takes practice and it takes time and you're going to make mistakes. So it suddenly frees up this idea that you have to do things perfectly, and how I think it relates to this idea of shame or being able to forgive yourself. Learning how to forgive yourself takes a lot of practice, and it's going to be a progressive journey over and over and over and over and over again. And my big thing that I would say, like, if you want a place to practice or to lean into how do I start forgiving myself, it's always starting with the really small things.
Yeah.
It's always starting with the really tiny things. Like how often do you and I both do this thing where we mess up cooking dinner, right? We burn the chicken a little bit, or I made something recently where I put way too much seasoning in it. And I'm like, this is going to be fine. We're just going to eat this food. And we get all frustrated and upset at ourselves and have all of this shame and remorse and guilt because we just made a mistake of, preparing food for the family. And it's like, oh, you can just forgive yourself. Like that's a little space where you get to practice, because it's not the end of the world. It's not, everybody, maybe we just throw dinner out and we order pizza, right? And you can forgive yourself in those small little moments. And if you can continually practice, you can even have fun with like making a mistake on purpose. So then you can then practice forgiving yourself, right? I'm going to accidentally, spill. Oh, I just spilled and now I have to clean it up. But that's okay because I'm human and I make mistakes. Like that's a silly example, but you get the idea of like learning how to practice in these small ways of forgiving yourself is going to really help when you come up against all of the shame shit, all the stuff that you've been holding on to for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right. All of that stuff is going to take some really heavy lifting to be able to forgive yourself. And of course, it's like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get. The more you practice forgiving yourself, the easier it's going to become. So you can actually start lifting some of those heavy things off of you and not have to carry that guilt and shame anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a great question.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a crack. Just a little bit. Like you said something that really stood out was longing to release it, to connect within your body, not just in your thoughts. Like you have it figured out on paper. And I think you answered like a really big key for yourself in there of connecting with your body. Like clear, like you do a good job of the analytical, of the processing, of putting it out on paper, of the journaling, of using these tools. Like you've got it. And you're like, the part that's missing is like releasing it from my body, connecting my body. And I would encourage you for a bit to put the pen down, to move your body, to looking into breath work, to looking into like maybe you're just going for a walk, maybe you're stretching your, like just sitting there and like moving your, just little things of where you're actually connecting with your body. When you're feeling this come up and you're inspired to write, like, writing's great. There's nothing wrong. Like you've got that. I encourage that. We suggest it. But for the time being, you're like, I've got this aspect. I'm journaling and it's not coming through. Like, what can I do to connect with my body? You got to move your body. You got to start thinking about where you're feeling it in your body. Start like, where is it sitting in you? Where does it feel like you're cramped up and you can't move? Where can you bring more movement and fluidity into your life, into your space? And being like, my brain has done a great job. And so now I'm going to give my body a chance to move it out. And whether you're going to pick up a craft, or even like seriously, just like going for a walk, or if that's not accessible to you, just finding ways that you are able to move your body and moving them. Finding, if you're like, I don't have the time, well, you have the time to write. You have the time to do a little something. Maybe you sit on the floor for a minute and place a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly, or on the couch, or however, and just like really feel your body as you're breathing. Like you're working on your breath, but you're experiencing your chest rise. You're experiencing your belly, like really emphasis on your belly of pushing it out. You're feeling your belly move. You're feeling the way that your arms slowly move and your shoulders start to rotate and expand out so your arms can move with your body as you breathe, and then coming back in. And maybe, experiment with wiggling your toes, just feeling your body actually moving and the tiny sensations. And maybe you start to notice how, like maybe your hair is filling on your head, or the way that your eyes feel when you blink, and just these little subtle movements and moments of your body, without thinking about how you're going to articulate it, without thinking about how you're going to write about it, just being present with where you are without the, how am I going to write this? Am I going to like planning your journaling, and just like feeling your body. Really connecting in there for a little bit and seeing what comes up, seeing what can happen from that space, seeing like noticing smells, noticing tastes, and just taking it out of the head and bringing it down. Everything from here down, starting to slowly like melting chocolate coming through, and start to bring awareness through every aspect of it.
I love it. Melting chocolate.